The daf yomi for today is Makkos daf chaf aleph, Makkos 21, and we're discussing the prohibition of cutting off the corners of your beard or shaving off your head. So we're going to start on 21a on the first wide line. It says v'chayev al harosh, that it says in our Gemara on the first white line on 21a, the daf is of course dedicated for Shmir, for the Chayalim, that's all, for the Shvuyim and Yeshua, for Am Yisrael, it's Eis Sarah, and you're liable for cutting your head in two places, one on either side. So where are these places that you're not allowed to round off the ears with the temples? Where are these places? Machve Rav Sheshes bein Pirkei L'Reisha. So Rav Sheshes said he showed that this is between the Pirkei Dereisha, the place where the Prakim Shemitchabrim Sham Pirkei Atzam was the place where the bones meet on the head, on the sides of the temple. So basically, I want to point out here that the commentary that we're using now is no longer on the side of the Gemara. It's no longer Rashi, because back on 19b, it had stated Rabbeinu Gufo Tahor, the Yatza Nishmaso B'Tahara will P ratio there. It says in the commentary of Rashi on 19b, our teacher, his body is pure and his soul left in purity, and he did not comment anymore. From this point on is the commentary of his student Rabbi Yehuda Bar Nasan, who is also actually the son-in-law of Rashi. So now on the side of the page we have the commentary of the son-in-law of Rashi, no longer Rashi, to our Masechta. And then it said, the next line in the Gemara says, Val Zakan Shtayim, and then on the beard is two. Mikan, Ushtayim Mikan, two on each side, Va'achas Namata, and one below. Machve Rashesh is being puricated dikna by the joints on the beard. So we showed it where it is. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Im Nitlan Kum Babas Achas, Rabbi Eliezer says that if you remove all the hair at once, Eino Chayav El Achas, you're only liable for once. For one, because Rabbi Eliezer's of the position, Kasavar Chad Lafu, that all the corners of the beard is one prohibition. And so therefore, if you remove them all at once, you're only liable for one prohibition. You're only liable if you remove the hair from your face with a, you're only liable if you remove it with a razor. So says the Gemara, so this is a reference to the beard hair, that the prohibition, the corners of the beard, you're not allowed to shave. I might think, let's say you cut it with scissors, you're liable. You cannot basically destroy it. I might think that even if you remove them with these planes, these other instruments, you'll be liable. You cannot shave it. What is a giluach, a cutting, which is also destroying? This is the razor. So as it relates to the beard, there's a prohibition to cut it with a razor specifically, but not with anything else. You're allowed to remove the hair as long as you're not using a razor. So you could use like a cream or maybe some laser treatment, or wax, I don't know. But the payas, the corners of your head, that you can't remove at all, even if it's not with a razor, presumably. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, I feel locked up in Malaket Reitani Chayiv. Rabbi Eliezer says even if you cut it with this plane, you're liable. I mean, so what's Rabbi Eliezer's position? Igamir Gzera Shava, if he compares it, if he's going to compare the word paya, the word payah that is said by a regular Israelite to the Kohanim, he would require then tar, he would require specifically a razor. So why does he say you're liable from Malake Britani? Lo gamir, and if he doesn't learn it, Gzera Shava, if he does not learn this Gzera Shava, then Misparam Namilo, so then he shouldn't even be liable with scissors, because the only reason to exempt scissors is because it's not mashchis, and that's only said by a regular Israelite. So the Gemara says, Gamir Gmeris, Kzer Shava, because Savar Hani Nami Giluachavi. So really, he does learn this Kzer Shava, but he says that actually with Malak and Ritani, it's also an example of shaving, and so therefore he says you're liable. So now we're up to the next Mishnah, which is the Mishnah that refers to the prohibition of tattooing. Says our Mishnah, Hakosev Kesuvos Kaka, that if you write a tattoo on one's flesh, then you're going to be liable for lashes. Rivan explains, Kosef Techila al Basaro Bisam or Bisikra, that if you write first on your flesh with a dye or an ink, and then you make a incision, a cut into the flesh with a needle or a knife, and then the dye goes into the skin and it's there for all of the days of his life. So from the Rivan, we see that it's a tattoo is permanent, and you're not allowed to write in any way on your flesh in this manner. Commentaries point out his way it seems to be inexact, because he's saying that other commentaries say no, that first you make the incision and then you pour in the ink. But the Rivan's way is first you make the ink and then you make the incision. Kasav lo kaka. Let's say you wrote without an incision, or kakav lo kasav, or let's say you made the incision without writing. Eno chayav ad sheyichtov ivayi kaka video ubechol. You're only liable once you do it both with ink and with or with like a dye. Bechol davar shul roshim, anything that makes a mark. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon Omer, eno chayav ad sheyichtov sham es Hashem, unless you write the name of God, as it states, uksuvas kakalo titnu bachem ani Hashem. You cannot make a tattoo amongst you. I am God. So the tattoo is, the problem is if you write as the shame, then you're going to be liable, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Shimon. Amarei Rav Achad Berei de Ravo Rav Ashi, Ad Yichtov Ani Hashem Mamish. Not that you write the name of God, but you have to write Ani Hashem. Amarei. So the response that he has to that, Rav Ashi says, Rav Achad, whoa, that's not what Rabbi Shimon meant to say. But Keditani Bar Kapara, Keditani Bar Kapara, he says it's like we learned in the Brisa of Bar Kapara. Eino chayav ashiyachtov shem avodas kochavim. You're only liable, saying the Brisa, until you write the name of an idolatry, as it says ukesovas kakalo titnu bachem ani Hashem, ani Hashem v'lo acher. So it means to say that you're not allowed to write a tattoo that rejects the fact that I am God, and that is the name of an idolatry. So now we've come to the next part. Amar Malkia, Amar Ada Bar Abba. So this is Rav Malkiah. He says, Asur Adam sheyitain efer makla al dabe makaso. Person is prohibited to put some ashes onto his wound, because that is going to look like a tattoo. And so therefore, since it looks like a tattoo, it's going to be prohibited. So Amar Rav Nachman Bereid Rav Ika. So this was the position of Rav Malkiah. So Rav Nachman, the son of Rav Ika, says, Shpud Shfachos Vigumos Rav Malkiyo. The position that was taught throughout the Shas, which is about a ishpud, about a spit, which is that on Yontif, Rivan tells us that a spit that you roast the meat on it is prohibited to move. Once you remove the meat, it becomes muksa. And says Rav Malkiel in the name of Ada that you can remove it and place it in the corner. So this teaching was said by the name of Rav Malkiel, and also Shfachos. This is a Mishnah in Ksuvos where Rabbi Eliezer says that even if a woman brings in with her many maids into the marriage, that Rav Malkiel says the law is like Rabbi Eliezer, that even if she brings many maids into the marriage, she still has to work, because idle hands lead to sin. And Gumos, and what is the position that Rav Malkiel said in the name with Gumos? That is from the Gemara in Nida, where it tells us Rabbi Chalbo says in Imar Afuna that the two Cyrus that they said they need to have gumos like holes at the bottom. So we see that if a girl has hairs, they need to have holes at the bottom in order for her to consider her an adult. Whereas then Rav Malkiel says even though there are no hairs, if there are these holes where the hairs grow from, then it's clear that she's an adult as well. But Burios, Ephraim Mikla, Vigvina was Rav Malkiah. But the teaching about a Buris, that if you're cutting the hair of an idolater, that Rav Malkiah says you need to leave three fingers in every direction if you're cutting a Burius haircut, which is a type of idolatrous haircut. And also the idea of the ashes are prohibited because of a tattoo, and also the concept of gvina, which is listed in the Mishnah in Avodah Zarah, which talks about the cheese of the idolaters, and the Gemara there discusses what's the reason why the cheese of idolaters is prohibited, and Rav Malkiah said because they spread the pig fat on it. So those are the three teachings that are said from Rav Malkiah. So Rav Papa Amar Masnisin Masnise Rav Malkiah. When it's from a Mishnah and a Brisa, that statement that's commenting on a Mishnah and a Brisa, that's Rav Malkiah. Shmaitata Rav Malkiah. When it's on an Amora, it's Rav Malkiah. V'simanech, and the way you remember this is Masnisa Malkasa. The Mishnah is always the queen. And my Benaya, what's the difference between Rav Papa and Rav Nachman Berei de Rav? What's the difference between these two versions of what did Rav Malkiah say versus what Rav Malkiah said? That the distinction between them is shvachos. That the difference between them is about the maids, which was a statement of Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah. That according to Rav Nachman, Rav Malkiah say this, for according to Rav Papa and son of Mishnah, Rav Malkiah said it. Going back to the idea of the prohibition of placing the ashes on the spot of the wound of the cut. He prohibited even if it was just a wound to allow the bloodletter to take out blood. Rav Ashi Amar Kol Makom Sheish Shem Makkos Mochiach. Any place which it was clearly there that there was a wound, where there was a wound there, then obviously the wound proves it's not a tattoo. And he didn't do it for the purpose of a tattoo, he did it for the purpose of a healing, and so therefore it's going to be permitted. So now we're up to the next Mishnah. Nazir Shaya Shota Yayin Kolayom. Let's say there's a Nazirite who's drinking wine all day long in Chayav El Achas. He's only warned once at the beginning. He's only going to be liable for one prohibition. Amrlo al tishta shota. If they keep telling him to drink, they say don't drink, and he stops drinking in between. And he's drinking after each warning, and he doesn't stop. He's liable for each and every one. Let's say he is. Oh, I skipped a line here. Let's say he's a Nazir and he's coming in contact with the dead all day. He's liable only once. But but keep warning him, don't become tummy. He's going to be liable. If they keep warning him, he's going to be liable for each and every one. Excuse me, I skipped the line again. Let's say he's cutting his hair all day. He's liable only once. But if they said to him, but if they said, don't cut the hair, and he continues to cut the hair, he's liable for each and every one. Let's say he's wearing Klayim all day long. He's wearing the woolen linen. He's only liable one time. They say, don't wear it. who poshes v'lovish, and he takes off his garments and then wears it. He's going to be liable for each and every one. Yesh, Koresh, tell him, good morning, Jeff. We're on the top of 21b, just the top line. There are some ways in which this Nazarite can be plowing one furrow, and he's going to be liable, mishum shmon 11, and he's liable for 8 different prohibitions. What are these cases? So the Mishnah tells us, Hachoresh b'shor v'chamor. Let's say you plow with an ox and a donkey together. This is the prohibition of kalayim, because you can't work an ox and a donkey together. These are kosher and non-kosher animal that they're working together. It's the prohibition of kalayim. V'hem and they're both firstborn animals, and so therefore he's not allowed to work them. You're not allowed to work b'chor sharecha. And this follows the position of Rabbi Yehuda, who says Petach Hamor is prohibited to get any benefit from. And then what is the next case? Uviklayim bikarim. And now it is klayim, it's wheat and barley, and then they're in the vineyard, which is another prohibition. So now we're up to 4. That they're doing wheat and barley in the vineyard. So we have 2 different prohibitions of klayim. Ubishvi, since sabbatical year. Not allowed to plow in sabbatical year. V'yom tov. And it's yontif. You're not allowed to plow in yontif. V'kohen. And also he's a kohen, and who's not a v'nazir v'beis atuma. And it's a kohen or a Nazarite in a cemetery. And they're both not allowed to become tamei. So he's going to be in violation of 8 separate prohibitions, and so therefore he's going to get 8 sets of lashes. So the way I had explained it, the way I did the way I counted up the 8 was according to Tosfos, but others counted up differently. They count the klai behema as 2 separate prohibitions. But the klai behema is 1, and then the work with the firstborn as 2 separate prohibitions. That's the way Rashi does, and then the klai karim just as 1. So there's different ways to count it. Hanina ben Hakinai Omer afalovesh klayim. He could also be wearing klayim while he's plowing the field, and then he's in violation of another prohibition. Amrlo Eino Hashem. They said this is not considered because that's the prohibition is just for wearing the klayim, is not has anything to do with the plowing. It's just a totally separate action. Amrohem Afa Nazir Lohu Hashem. So he says also the Nazarite is not part of the plowing, it's just a totally separate thing. So comes along the Gemara and says that which you're liable for, that if you warned him not to wear a klayim and he wore it and took it off several times and they warned him each time, he's liable for each and every one. So you don't need to take it off completely. I feel machnis and motzi beis yad unkli shelo. Even if he just stuck his hand in and out of the jacket. Machli Rav Acha Brei de Rav Ika Ayule Vafuki. Like you basically put the jacket on and off. You don't have to get fully dressed, just take it on or off. Even if you don't even have to take it off, but if you just didn't wait, even if you only waited the time it would take to take it off and put it back on, he's going to be liable for lashes for every single action that he waited. So now we continue with the Gemara. It says that you can plow one time and you're liable for 8 lashes. Amaray Rabbi Yanai, the Chabura Nimnu v'Gamru. In the Chabura, in the study group, they took a vote and they calculated that one who covers over, or basically like covers over the earth, and he does it on kolayim, he does it with the seeds of wheat and barley that are placed together in the ground, he's going to get lashes, even though he himself did not plant them, but he's like he planted them because he covered them over. So the Gemara says, Amar and Rabbi Yochanan Lav Mishnah Seinu Hidu. So Rabbi Yochanan says, why did you need to take a vote on this? This is our Mishnah. It says, Yesh Chorim Sh'Telem Echad V'Chayev Olav Mishum Shmona Lavin. That you could do one action of plowing and you're liable 8 times. And one of those things was a Chorish B'Shor V'Chamor. And if you plow with the ox or donkey, V'Hei Muktashin, V'Kwaye B'Kerem. So, Hi Chorish T'Mechayev Mishum Kwayim, Echem Mishkachas. How can you be liable for Kwayim? Rav the milchse bahade the azil, isn't it that you cover over the earth with that you take the earth and you cover over the seeds, and that's going to be klayim while you're plowing. So Rabbi Yanai said, Amarle, he says, yeah, you're right, but ilav the dalilach chaspa mi mishkachas marganita tute. So Rabbi Yanai says to Rabbi Yochanan, yeah, you're correct that it's our Mishnah, but if it were not for the fact that I removed the pottery shard, would you have found the pearl underneath? Meaning to say, I pointed you in the right direction for you to get this ruling. So Amarle Reish Lakish or Rabbi Yochanan. So Reish Lakish says to Rabbi Yochanan, Ilav the kilsach gava rabba, were not for the fact that this great Rebbe praised you, that Rabbi Yanai praised you, Avamina masnisin mani Rabbi Akiva. I would have said that our Mishnah is not necessarily needed to be interpreted that way, that our Mishnah could be understood to be the position of Rabbi Akiva, who says that not that you are plowing over the klayim, and that's why you're liable, that you're plowing over with earth over the seed, but rather I'm a kayim klayim loka, that even if you allowed the klayim to remain in your field and you didn't remove them, you're going to be liable because of mekayim klayim. Let's say, for example, you build a fence. You have to do an action. Let's say you build a fence to keep it there. And so therefore, but from the fact that Rabbi Yanai says that's not, that our Mishnah is like you said, that you're actually doing an action of covering the seeds, that it's not like Rabbi Akiva. But otherwise, I would have thought it's Rabbi Akiva. My Rabbi Akiva, where does Rabbi Akiva say this? The Tanya, we learned in a brayso, that if you weed or you cover over the earth with klayim, which when there's klayim in the field, you get lashes. Rabbi Akiva Omer Afamakayim. Rabbi Akiva says, even if you just maintain it. My time is Rabbi Akiva. Why does Rabbi Akiva say even if you just maintain it? Because it says in the brayso, Sadchawo Tizra, klayim. It says that you are not able to plant your field with klayim. Ainly Ella Zoreya, I know that you're not allowed to plant it. Mikayim Minayan. How do I know you're not even allowed to keep the field? Tamalomar Kulayim Sadacha. Well, read it as Kulayim, your field you cannot have at all. So that's how Rabbi Akiva says that the prohibition is even just to maintain it. Says the Gemara, Amrlei Ul Rav Nachman V'Lokol Nami Mishum Zoreya B'Yom Tov. What about another prohibition? You're not allowed to plant on Yom Tov. So we had said that you were plowing on Yom Tov. So there's another prohibition that you're planting the seeds on Yom Tov. So Amar Lei Tanavashir. So Rav Nachman responds, yeah, the Mishnah didn't list everything. It left some out. So he says, no, you can't give that answer of Tanavashir. Amar Lei Tanakatani Shmone. He says 8. He's being very specific. The At Amras Tanavashir. You want to say he wasn't being specific? Amarava. So the reason why you don't count the action on Shabbos on Yom Tov as 2 is because Yesh Chiluk Malachas for Shabbos. If you do one action on Shabbos, it could be in violation of many different prohibitions for each and every prohibition. But on Yom Tov, you would only be liable for once. If you did it, that's by Shabbos how you're liable for each and every one. But on Yom Tov, what's the reasoning for this? What's the reason? Exactly like it's like Jeff pointed us to, that according to some, the reason is that what's the reason why you're liable for each and every one on Shabbos? According to Gemara, we had this. We had this a few times that Rabbi Nosson says that since the Torah says lo sasa kol b'muacha, and then it says lo sevaro eish b'yom Shabbos, and the prohibition of fire comes to be mechalek, to say you're liable for each and every one. And so therefore, on Yom Tiv, we don't have this prohibition on fire. And so therefore, they're all included in one. That's exactly what Jeff was pointing us to, a big shkoyach. So Amarle he says that's exactly, he says, so Ula says to Rava, yeah, you're exactly right. So we'll pick this up tomorrow's daf, because now it's Rosh Chodesh, so we have to start davening a little bit earlier. But Baruch Hashem, this is today's daf Yom Yashar Koach.
Thank you.